Great. Well, we may as well go ahead and get started. I'm sure a couple of people are making their way down from tea and coffee, but given that this is a very packed presentation today, I'm keen to maximize the time and make sure we get through it all. So it's a real pleasure to be back at the App Promotion Summit. I'm having a little bit of deja vu because I presented in this exact room on this exact spot a year ago, so it's great to be back. And I'm really excited to be spending the next 40 minutes with you all talking about how to drive app growth through cross-channel messages. For those of you that have a keen eye, you will notice that this is a different topic to what is printed in the brochures. So if any of you were expecting to spend the next 40 minutes talking specifically about SMS, just to preface that this is a slightly different setup. And the reason we wanted to do that is, given it's the App Promotion Summit, we really wanted to broaden out from just SMS, which was the original topic, and hopefully this resonates a little bit more with all of you in the room today. So a really quick intro from my side before we jump into it. I'm the VP of Customer Success at Iterable, and I manage our entire post-sales operation for our international markets. I've been in the growth marketing and customer communication space for a little over 12 years now, and I've worked and managed teams in Sydney, San Francisco, and now most recently in London. And during that time, I've had the real pleasure of working with over hundreds of brands to optimize and scale their cross-channel marketing strategies. And the thing that I'm really passionate about, and ultimately the reason I joined Iterable, is that I'm really interested in how, as marketers, we leverage data to power those really exceptional customer experiences at scale. Now, for those of you in the room that aren't too familiar with Iterable, we are the industry-leading customer communication platform for forward-thinking brands that are looking to deliver a best-in-class omnichannel experience at scale. So to break that down a little bit further, and awesome, I love that I have people in the front row, that's brilliant. So to break it down a little bit further, our mission at Iterable is to connect our customers' customers with products and services that bring them joy. And when we think about joy, we really define it as that emotion of happiness that's caused by something exceptionally good or satisfying. And when we as consumers engage with brands today, we tend to find that feeling of joy when we believe that a brand is speaking directly to us. So they know our likes and our dislikes, they can recommend things that they think we might find interesting, and ultimately they engage with us on the right device at the most important moments in our lives. And interestingly, studies show that emotionally connected customers are 2 times as valuable for brands as highly satisfied customers. And so as marketers, we're encouraging all of you to put joy at the forefront of your marketing strategy to help your customers cut through the noise and really find that utility, value, and purpose in interacting with your brand. Now we say that, but the current reality is pretty far off from what we're just talking about. The current reality is that most people are overwhelmed by noise. On average, studies show that all of us are exposed to over 10,000 ads a day, over 100 emails, and over 50 mobile notifications. And that's just on a daily basis. And what makes that 1,000 times worse is that most of those messages are entirely irrelevant. More often than not, brands do not understand our actual needs or our intentions. They send us promotions for products that we're not interested in or we don't really care about. And their messaging is either out of context or it contradicts the actual experience that we're having in real life with that brand. So at Iterable, we call that problem the activation gap. And really, it arises when brands struggle to connect the data that they have on file about their customers with the engagement channels that are driving that experience. Perhaps unsurprisingly, most brands actually have the data that they need to power the types of engagements that they want for their users. But that data is often captured in a variety of different tools within their tech stack. And because those brands lack the core activation technology that can transform that data into those customer experiences, their entire go-to-market strategy is suffering. So let's talk about today's reality. Acquisition, is more expensive than ever. The death of the third-party cookie has meant that marketers have to think a lot more strategically about how to capture and leverage both zero and first-party data. And as data volumes grow, accessing, connecting, and leveraging that data is really impacting marketers. It's often process-heavy, it's time-consuming, and it's just generally a really painful process. And what this has meant for brands is that a lot of them are falling short when it comes to the consumer standards that we all have today. In fact, 71% of consumers say that they are not getting the customer engagement that they expect. And what we're seeing is that customers are very, very happy to abandon a brand and move on to something better where they do get that experience that they're looking for. Unfortunately, this is particularly true for brands that have an app presence, as I'm sure most of you in the room do today. And the reason for that is that there is constant battle for market share. So in 2021 alone, there were 2 million new apps launched, and 25% of users who downloaded an app only used it once. Now, the good news is that app engagement is still incredibly high. So in 2022, there were over 142 billion apps that were downloaded and about 167 billion in-app expenditure. And 90% of mobile users who were engaging with an app more than once or twice a week were highly likely to continue using that app. So how do you, as marketers, make sure that your customers aren't in that 25% of users that download an app and use it once, but instead are in that group of people that are regularly engaging? The key, which I'm sure none of you are going to be surprised about, is personalization. And as I mentioned at the start of the session today, consumers are looking for that exceptionally good or satisfying experience that sparks joy. And oftentimes those exceptionally good or satisfying experiences are brought about when a person feels that the brand that's talking to them is engaging with them and knows them on that deeper level. They're responding to their actions and their behaviors in real time, and ultimately they're giving them what they want when they want it. And for marketers, what that translates into is the right content on the right channel at the right time. Yet despite everyone in this room likely knowing that secret, 74% of app marketers report that they are struggling to scale their personalization efforts. So how do you move and build a cohesive and robust data strategy that takes you through to a world in which you're creating always-on customer journeys that send those personalized messages to the right people at the right time and on the right channel? At Iterable, we think it's all about cross-channel. Having a data-driven cross-channel strategy enables you to individualize, harmonize, and adapt your marketing strategy at scale. But don't just take our word for it. I love to have some stats and some data to back it up. So there are 3 core data points that I wanted to call out here. The first is that 89% of customers are retained by companies that have an omni-channel strategy. 49% of consumers will buy from their favorite omni-channel brands at least once a week. And companies who have increased their cross-channel subscriber engagement typically tend to see a 10% year-on-year increase in growth. So with all of that in mind, let's take a look at 3 core channels. Yes, one of them is SMS because I promised you some SMS content today. But I'm going to start with push because if you're in the room today and you're at the App Promotion Summit, it's very likely that you either send push messages or you're thinking about sending them in the future. So when used effectively, push can be an extremely effective channel for sharing highly curated content and driving in-the-moment engagement with your users. Every single one of us in the room today has a mobile phone, so that ability to reach your audience in real time with a push message in the moments that matter the most to them is really undeniable as a marketer. We tend to see it as a really great channel for things like capturing attention, celebrating milestones, re-engaging with users, And some of the campaigns that we've seen work really, really well over push are things like onboarding flows, reminders, breaking news, and probably my favorite, which is limited time offers. There's also a number of really, really cool design features that you can start to leverage today through rich push to amplify the messages that you're sending to your consumers across their life cycle. So you've got things like custom images, you can add GIFs, you can also have tappable action buttons, which allow your users to interact without even having to leave their home screens. So looking at email, arguably kind of the most cost-effective and impactful way of increasing your long-lasting relationships and reaching a really broad audience. Email does have the largest reach, and it can also be used for hyper-personalized segments of users. And the reason I love email the most is that it has the largest real estate of any type of message where you can put personalized content. I think a really important thing when we talk about cross-channel is that today, given that most of the people we're speaking with have mobile phones, 54% of emails are actually opened on a mobile device. So when you're thinking about your cross-channel journeys and you're looking at embedding email in at various different points, having the ability for those emails to render correctly on a mobile device is a really important part of your email strategy. And finally, SMS, probably the most underrated and underutilized marketing channel that exists today. But it is really a channel that's growing significantly in popularity because we have a mobile-first audience today. In the US, the popularity is probably the fastest growing. And what we're seeing is that about 75% of consumers have subscribed to an SMS channel. And if you haven't yet considered SMS, there's also some incredibly important stats here that show you just how relevant this could be in your cross-channel marketing strategy. So the average open rate for an SMS campaign is 98%. 90% of messages are read within the first 3 minutes of receipt. And there's between a 2 and 10 times higher click-through rate than similar channels such as email, which we were just looking at. So now I'd love to turn it over to all of you to find out how you're thinking about your cross-channel strategies. We're going to use Slido for this. So if you haven't used Slido, you can just open up your phones, go to slido.com. There's also a QR code as well here, if that's an easier way just to scan it. The code for the Slido, which we'll be using throughout the presentation today, is 1423966. And the first question I have for all of you is, how many channels are you currently using in your campaigns? And I can switch over here. For anyone that selected 3, do you mind putting your hand up and telling me what channels they are? Are they the 3 we've just looked at, push, SMS, email? Is there anything else you're leveraging?
Would you class in-app as?
I would indeed, yeah, as a separate channel. Yeah, great. Yeah. Amazing. Great, so it's looking like 3 is probably the resounding answer here, which is great. A few of you using 4 or more, which is awesome. And then a number using 1 or 2. And interestingly, this data has really changed from when we presented at the App Promotion Summit last year, where actually the vast majority of people in the room were sort of hovering around that 1 to 2 channels. So this is really, really awesome to see. Okay, so I have a follow-up question for you all if you want to stay on the Slido. What is your primary channel? So we've just talked about how many you use, but what's the primary channel? And if you stay on that Slido, it should come up automatically. Great. A lot of people on email. I'm not really surprised about that. In-app, definitely another channel, so great to see that a lot of you are push and in-app focused as well as primary. No one using SMS as a primary channel, which is really interesting, but maybe some of you starting to think about SMS after the last slide. Okay, fantastic. So one of my personal pet peeves at conferences is sitting in a session and being told, hey, the grass is so much greener on the other side and you can get there as long as you buy our product or our service. So I'm definitely not going to do that today. And what I'd actually like to do is dig into some really actionable takeaways and examples that are going to help you demystify that cross-channel strategy and either get started on that journey if you were in one of the groups that said you were leveraging just 1 or 2 channels today. And then also if you're in those groups that are leveraging 3 or 4 or more, hopefully sort of start to think about ways that you can improve that cross-channel strategy. So the 3 best places to start when you're thinking about cross-channel, first is, what are the most important use cases and how will they drive engagement across your core customer journey? The second thing to be thinking about is, what are the types of campaigns that you are or should be sending at each of those key milestones within your customer journey? And then third is, what are the goals? So what are you actually driving towards with each of those messages? And how are you going to measure whether or not they're successful? And the biggest piece of advice that I can give anyone that's thinking about cross-channel is that it's definitely not just a one and done campaign or exercise. So to be really successful at cross-channel and effective at sparking that joy that we were talking about earlier, you really need to have a cohesive strategy that activates your customers across every stage of the life cycle, whether that be from onboarding to growing them to if they're dropping off and you're noticing that they're not engaging, how are you going to bring them back and re-engage them? So you might have seen when you came in that on each of your chairs we have popped a worksheet that looks like this. And if you're standing at the back, feel free to see one of the Iterable people and we can pass you one as well. But what we're hoping is that this will be a useful takeaway that really just encourages you to start thinking about different stages and phases in your customer lifecycle. And also, on top of that, the channels and the use cases that you have for each of those channels. And really, this matrix is, or this worksheet is kind of a consolidated version of a matrix mapping exercise that we would go through with a lot of our customers to get them identifying those blank spaces and how they can optimize their current strategy. Now, if you haven't been through an exercise like this, or you have been, but it was a while ago, and you're starting to think, hey, maybe we need to readdress that at some point in the future, I wanted to share sort of an example of how this might look in action. And of course, the first step, even before getting to this worksheet, is to map out your customer journey. We recommend that you start it from that initial point of engagement. So that could be things like a sign up, an app download, maybe a free trial, and that you work it through right until that drop-off point. And of course, then once someone has dropped off, start thinking about how you might be able to get them back into the funnel. So on the slide here, I've just taken kind of a snapshot of the very initial stage of a customer journey. So we've got the initial sign up that might happen, and then right through to ideally making their first purchase. But if we had more time, we would of course sort of extend this out as I've just described and look at everything kind of post that first purchase. So once you've mapped out these key touch points, then you'll want to start thinking about what are those core interactions that you're hoping that users will be having with your brand at every different stage. And then I also recommend starting to think about a timeline as well. So you can see at the bottom of this slide, we've sort of mapped it out in terms of days. And so what we're showing is that somebody signs up, maybe they complete their profile in the first 2 days, and then we're working with them to make their first purchase on around about day 8. So what you want to do next is then start plotting out the key messages that you're looking to embed at each of those different milestones as your users reach them. One thing that I would encourage everyone to keep in mind is that the milestones and the days aren't always going to go hand in hand as you want them to. And when that doesn't happen and they don't sort of go hand in hand, for example, we don't get a profile completion on day 2, that's when you might want to start about how you can sort of branch out your journey and maybe start to send different types of messages on those days to get people back into the funnel so that they match up with the key milestones. So for example, if someone hasn't completed their profile on day 2, instead of sending a, hey, congrats, you've completed your profile, maybe we want to think about sending a reminder message and just reinforcing the value of adding to their profile and what they can get out of it. Now, once you've plotted those key messages, you'll want to start thinking about the best channel to send them through. And this is really where that cross-channel element comes in. So as you can see in this example, we're alternating between SMS when the user signs up, an email to sort of push them an offer to make their first purchase. And then when they have made it their first purchase, we're sending them a push notification to say, congrats, your pups are going to love the meal, and we'll be in touch with you closer to the delivery date with more information. Now, depending on the tools that you're using in your MarTech stack, this selection of channel could also be something that you think about leveraging AI for. So at Iterable, we're just about to launch a new feature in our AI suite, which is called channel optimization. And what that will allow you to do is to ask Iterable to send the correct message on the correct channel, whether that be SMS, push, email, in-app, depending on how that user has engaged in the past. So hopefully your technology provider can kind of use the tools that they've built to help you make those decisions in real time about which channel to send on. But if you don't have that, then of course, sort of manually work this into your strategy, A/B test it with some different channels and see what seems to resonate. So now I'm going to turn it over to you again. So we're going to be back on the same Slido that we were on before. I will give you another QR code just in case. I think this is the last Slido poll, so no need to get out your phones again after this one. But I'm curious to know how many of you have mapped out your customer journey in this way. So it looks like we're pretty even, actually, split across the room, which is great. So some of you who haven't done it yet, hopefully the takeaway and the process we've just walked through will be helpful for you to be able to try and implement this within your team in the next couple of weeks. And then, of course, people who've started, you've still got a ways to go. And I think there's always room to optimize. So I would agree that's the one that I would select as well if I was doing this poll. Great. Let's go back. Fab. So today we've taken a look at really the theory behind personalization and cross-channel. And we've also looked a little bit at the application of that through the worksheet and the process that we just walked through. So what I'd love to do for kind of the third part of the session today is really bring it all home by running through a couple of real-life examples of how Iterable customers have executed some best-in-class cross-channel campaigns across their customer lifecycle, and also share some of the results with you all that they're seeing off the back of those cross-channel campaigns. So there's a lot on this slide, I'll walk you through it. And also if anyone wants to come and chat to me about any of these examples or a member of the Iterable team, come and find us at our booth. But the first example that I have is from an Iterable customer that I'm sure a lot of you are really familiar with. They are called Fit, and they're the UK's #1 rated fitness app. And really what Fit has done is they've built their acquisition and their onboarding strategy around a 14-day free trial. So as I'm sure, kind of as you can all imagine, it's really a business critical initiative and moment in their customer journey lifecycle is moving those trial users through to paid subscribers after those 14 days are up. And this actually became particularly true for Fit during COVID, because what they saw when people couldn't go to the gym and they were at home and thinking about what should they do, they saw a really rapid increase in free trial signups. But interestingly, a drop in conversions from those free trials to paid memberships. So to tackle it, the Fit marketing team sat down and they did what we've all just done, which is they mapped out their onboarding flow from start to finish. And then they overlaid the key touch points that they wanted to have with their users in that life cycle. And looked specifically at onboarding. And what they found is that their onboarding sequence at the time really lacked clear objectives for the users. So people were feeling confused about how to leverage the free trial and also really unsure about how to kickstart their fitness journey and engage with the app. And what they found is that if they weren't engaging them on the days and the channels where people were most likely to engage, that oftentimes that resulted in sort of a non-movement through from that free trial to a paid subscription. Now, I'm sure we're all really familiar with waking up on a Monday morning, thinking I've had a really big weekend. Today's the day that I kickstart my fitness journey, getting really in the mood. And then by Wednesday, Thursday, that sort of willingness or willpower has very much evaporated and we're looking forward to a lazy weekend. Well, that's exactly what Fit found as well. And so for them, it was vitally important that they captured that initial willpower from their users and then channeled it into a long-term commitment. So through A/B testing, they actually found that if a user didn't complete their first class within 5 days of starting the trial, they had a much higher likelihood that they would churn prior to converting to a paid subscription. So once they knew that those first 5 days were really their most critical moment in the onboarding journey, they then tested channels. They also tested content, timing, and frequency of the messages that they were sending to their users. And what they found is that two things. One, they had to increase the number of messages that they were sending to users in those first 5 days. But also, when they used a combination of email and push, that the first day activation actually jumped from 58% to 70%. So it's sort of both of those two things combined. And I've got a couple of screenshots here that will hopefully bring that to life for you a little bit more. So you can see here that as soon as a user has signed up to the free trial, they're sent a push notification through Iterable. And the push notification is saying, hey, we really want to send you some recommendations for how to make the most of your free trial. So complete your profile, tell us what your goals are, and then we'll be able to send you those recommendations. And then on the right-hand side, what you can see is once somebody had completed their profile, they're sent this hyper-personalized email. And in this example, it says, hi, Adrian, you have selected core strength as your goal. So we're going to recommend that you attend this strength class, and you can click here to add it to your calendar and get started. Now, in addition to the first 5 days, Fit also looked at the last 10 days of the trial, and they found that there was additional kind of behaviors that were indicative of people sticking around. So things like their referral source, how many classes they took in the first 10 days, and also whether or not they had purchased some of their wearable technology. So knowing those three additional things, they started to weave that into their push notifications and their emails. And I'm sure you will be able to see that the results sort of largely speak for themselves. So Fit saw a 15% year-on-year increase in trial to paid conversions. They also saw a 12% increase in first day activations. And lastly, but definitely not least, a 300% increase in year-on-year growth. And really at the core of this change in strategy was experimentation, but also a stronger connection and ability to leverage push notifications and email in their cross-channel marketing strategy. So the second example I want to share is from a customer of ours called Obrio, and they have a flagship astrology app called Nebula. Nebula is essentially a one-stop shop for astrology lovers, and it reaches people in 50 different countries, and the Nebula team also has 6 different localizations of their app and also therefore their marketing material. Now, in the 3 years that Nebula has been up and running, they've seen huge amounts of growth. So they now have about 17 million global users, and they've ranked several times as the top lifestyle app across both the App Store and the Google Play Store. So the specific campaign that we want to look at here was one that they did to celebrate their 3rd anniversary. And what they decided to do is really double down on a cross-channel marketing campaign for this specific time-based event. And they wanted to do that so that they could promote not only customer loyalty, but also try and see an increase in conversions of in-app purchases by trying to get users to chat with a live astrologist. So as you can see from the screenshots, because the campaign was very much time-based and also centered around kind of the core functionality within their app, the team really focused on push and in-app messages. Those are the two channels that they leveraged the most in this campaign. And then they leveraged A/B testing functionality within our platform, as well as the types of messages they sent and how frequently they sent them. And what you can see here is that the winning in-app notification was combined with a follow-up push notification. And they saw that when they did that, they leveraged both channels, that they saw their chat with an astrologer offer actually increase by 9 times. Now, the other thing that Nebula did when we think about cross-channel is they also went to activate their users on social media. And I remember from the Slido, there were a number of you in the room that said social media was sort of your primary channel. So this is extremely relevant, hopefully, to that. But what they did to leverage their social channels was they actually used Iterable's deep linking functionality within their mobile messages. And what that allowed them to do was really direct users straight to their Instagram page to take part in the competition. And they were directed there from a push notification or an in-app. And you can actually see that in-app on the right-hand side of the screen here. So that button that says go to our Instagram through deep linking took them straight to their social media pages. So at the end of the day, through this campaign, what Obreo and Nebula as their flagship app saw was a 24-time increase in revenue compared to a very similar birthday or anniversary campaign that they had done the prior year when they didn't leverage cross-channel and A/B testing in this way. So the very last example that I want to leave you all with today is from a relatively new Iterable customer called Headway. Headway partnered with us in May of last year, so 2022. And if you're not familiar with Headway, they are a global edtech startup with Ukrainian roots, and their flagship product, which is the Headway app, is being used by more than 15 million people in 35 different countries. And it's one of the top 10 apps in the education category across both the Apple Store and the Google Play Store. Now, what's really interesting about Headway is that prior to partnering with Iterable, Headway was using an email-only platform to send the vast majority of their marketing messages. But as an app-based platform, they knew that mobile was really the key channel in order to unlock revenue and reach the vast majority of their subscribers. So they were looking for a cross-channel platform that would enable them to reach that audience of mobile-first users. And they came to Iterable. So fast forward roughly 10 months, and Headway are now leveraging very robust user segmentation, as well as the flexible data model and some of the machine learning that I mentioned a little bit earlier in the session today. And they're really doing that to create very timely cross-channel messages at scale to build brand awareness, but also what we're focused on here today with the case study is to communicate differently with their freemium versus their premium users. They have two very large segments of freemium and premium users. And one of the things that they're really focused on, as you can imagine, is moving people from the freemium subscription to the paid subscription. So similarly to Fit, which is the first case study we looked at today, the Welcome series for Headway is really the area in that customer journey that they identified that they needed to double down in. And what they did is that they wanted to try and promote different types of behaviors depending on whether somebody was a freemium user. The behavior they wanted to promote in that case was that they moved to a premium paid plan. And if they were premium users, they really wanted to try and drive app engagement so that those premium users stayed a long-term loyal customer for Headway. So on the right-hand side, what you can see here from the screenshots are their top performing welcome emails. They've tested them for both segments, freemium and premium. And you can see here, currently they're winning variations, but of course, with Iterable's testing, we'll continue to sort of send 10% of users into different variations to see if they perform better. And at that point, automatically switch the winning variant out to be sort of that new email that they're testing. But alongside those winning variants, you can also then see, I'm being told to update my Zoom, so hopefully this doesn't crash anything. But you can also see then below that, and I know they're really small and I apologize for this, but these are the push notifications that they have now coupled with their winning email variants. And what they have seen by combining winning variants with email and then a follow-up push notification is an average increase in email open rates across both their freemium and their premium users of about 12%, and they've seen almost double the number of opens with push notifications. They've also been able to see a 2.4% increase in click-to-purchase conversions from those freemium users and a 1.3% increase in purchase conversion rates from push notifications, equally from those freemium users. And what's really interesting about Headway is that given the success that they've seen with combining email and push, they're now looking to start integrating in-app as their third channel. And that is sort of the future state for them this year in order to start targeting and sending more relevant and timely messages within the application itself. So as we close out the session today, I really want to come back to one simple takeaway, and that is that driving growth, particularly app growth, is really done through connecting with your customers like you actually know them. So sending individualized, harmonized, and dynamic messages across all of the channels that your users engage with you on is the key to winning in the current reality. And of course, if you want to chat with me or any other members of the awesome Iterable team, we would love to continue the conversation with you. At Iterable, we're passionate about connecting people with products and services that bring them joy. We hope that we also spark joy with the customers that we work with. And on that note, we work with thousands of brands around the world to spark that joy. And as a final interesting data point for you all, through Iterable, we're sending about 460 billion cross-channel messages each year. So it kind of gives you an example of the scale that we're looking at here. So if you have a few moments, please stop by booth 6 and say hi. We also have a really awesome giveaway. And you can win prizes with 3 of our fantastic customers. There is a QR code that you can scan here. It's kind of small. I'll leave this screen up as we sort of filter out today, so feel free to come up and take a snapshot, or like I said, you can stop by our booth. We've got a $250 voucher with Secret Escapes, a annual membership to the Body Coach, and also a voucher for the Tottenham Hotspur Skywalk, probably good for people that don't have a fear of heights like myself, which is why I've never done that before. But it's a real pleasure, it has been a real pleasure hosting this session today. I hope you found a lot of value from it, and also that you enjoy the rest of the summit. So with that, we'll wrap up and yeah, enjoy the rest of your day.